Strolling through Tromaville can be very interesting. In fact, it can take you to New York. Today we're going to take a look at their second biggest character, one who got his own shorts and even met Toxie in the Toxic Avenger 4. In case you hadn't guessed it, we are looking at Sgt Kabukiman NYPD. I'm Ollamh, and welcome to Geek Corner Review. We start off with a prophecy, which might almost count as narration, or maybe just translation. Why the ancients would need Japanese translated into English is beyond me, but apparently they do. As you might have figured out, there is a great evil that threatens to come back, and the title character must fend off again. Only with a lot of mystical mumbo-jumbo thrown in. Per 80s rules, we have a couple of yuppies doing coke in broad daylight off a brand new car that has been gotten through less than honest ways. Enter a couple of kids and the first bad guy who... Is it just me, or does he look like a famous YouTuber?
Babes are gonna be falling all over you.
Wow, a gruesome murder and a visual pun. This movie delivers it all. Oh, now we get true narration. Meeting our main character of the film and possibly the missing member of National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. He's very casual about a family, including kids, being slaughtered. A rich white guy sponsoring a theater and being interviewed. Pretty telling if you know typical movie setup. I've never liked sauerkraut, and I like it even less now. Thank you, Uncle Lloyd. Well, Mr. Big doesn't seem to be very keen on the entertainment. Oh, how lucky he left just before all hell broke loose. Now, I realize that Kabuki isn't well known, but when blood starts spraying, everyone should know that it isn't part of the play. Griswold jumps onto the stage and starts to try and stop the crime. Not exactly doing well on that front. Eventually, he winds up next to the old man and becomes an unwilling participant in the man's last makeout session. Following the bad guys, Griswold falls down some stairs and starts his first transformation.
Okay, I'm wearing a dress.
It's a kimono, not a dress. I know it's the 80s, but you would think that he'd do at least a little research into Japanese culture. The reporters show the normal consideration for the feelings of others, which is none at all, while the actors try to tell the cops what happened. And because 80s in New York, we see a thug steal a car radio. At least he's nice enough to leave a sticker letting everyone know about the theft. Mr. Stewart isn't happy, of course. They disturbed his plans and now he has to get involved. Oh, and he's got a reverend on his side. This just keeps getting worse and worse. Just to prove that Stewart isn't nice, he shoots his own nephew point blank in the head. Also to prove that his wig-wearing psychopath is really weird, he dabs his candy in the nephew's blood and then eats it. I'm guessing these guys are pretty hardcore. Griswold heads home and... wow, this guy might have a bit of a drinking problem. I mean, how long did it take for him to accumulate all those cans? He realizes that he's in makeup and sees a vision of the old man trying to send him a message. The cops at the station give him a hard time, but from the looks of it, they'd be better off trying to calm down things there. Why is it that all police stations in the 80s were running right on the edge of complete and utter chaos? Griswold tries to get a reschedule for his date, but Connie is busy. She suggests that they go for a jog, which Harry doesn't really like, until the power of boners is invoked and the mention of spandex running shorts. Hey, the 80s weren't the height of fashion. We took what we could get. The chief wants to talk to Harry about his behavior, and, of course, the commissioner is giving him a hard time. Griswold tries to explain, but the chief tells him that the rest of the gunmen were Stewart's security men. This doesn't set well with the spirit, though, as it starts to change some of Harry's clothing right there. Harry is reassigned to a dry cleaning case. Turns out the chief has 4 shirts stolen recently. Harry goes to talk to the granddaughter of the murdered man. She tries to tell him about the spirit and offers him some worms to finish the binding. And tell me, does this acting seem a little off to you?
Evil spirits? Come on now, you're a full-grown woman, all right? You just talk to me in normal English.
At least they face the issue of sexism.
If only the order of the universe were not so unfair to womankind, I would have been chosen to receive the gift and would not now be dealing with such a penis-wielding imbecile as yourself.
In some ways, the movie was actually kind of ahead of its time. Reginald Stewart agrees to talk to Harry, but seems a bit preoccupied. It's a trauma movie. You have to accept that they don't shy away from anything. Oh, she was shining his shoes. Of course! Then why was she licking her lips clean as she came up? It turns out that the spirit doesn't just change Griswold's clothing, but also imparts random information about Japanese swords to him as well. The movie almost ends quite soon as Kabukiman almost gets him to kill Stewart at their first meeting. Of course, that doesn't happen because we need to see that spandex-covered butt. Now, shouldn't a detective be able to jog at least a little bit? It doesn't look like they did that much. It turns out that LaRosa is onto Reverend Snipes and points out the connection between Snipes and Stewart.
He hasn't paid taxes in years.
Hasn't paid taxes? You ought to run for mayor.
Or a president. Apparently not paying taxes is a good thing in politics. So Connie decides to run a few more laps, but gets surrounded by some of Snipes' goons. She doesn't do too bad at first, but they chase her into the middle of the park and proceed to beat her and rape her, with a ton of witnesses. Again, 80s New York is to blame. Griswold tries to intervene, but they start beating him up too. His sandals fly to his rescue as he turns fully into Kabukiman for the first time. The effects are actually quite well done, especially for the time. With the spirit in the driver's seat, Kabukiman uses his powers and abnormal abilities to beat off the punks, making use of several Japanese instruments and weapons, including a fan, sword, chopsticks, and even sushi rolls. After changing into his normal clothing, Griswold and Lotus go to an Italian restaurant to wait to hear the results of how LaRosa is doing. Apparently, Kabukiman is influencing Griswold's tastes as he orders raw fish. Harry is still having difficulty believing the prophecy, even with the strange things that have been happening to him. Snipes comes on the news, though, defending the criminals that beat and raped LaRosa, calling it youthful antics. Now, I have to stop and question Lloyd Kaufman's writing here. I think he might have a time machine, to be honest. A man not paying taxes, running for political office, and having a good chance to win. And kids who have raped someone getting off because it's youthful activities. He was totally writing about 2016 decades before it happened. Stewart is not happy with the Reverend, so sends his blonde market clone, otherwise known in the movie as Rembrandt, to kill LaRosa. He changes the doses on the charts to cause an overdose to kill her, and a nurse doesn't suspect the order to give her a needle full of morphine. Harry recognizes the eyes of Rembrandt, but it's too late. Harry goes to the chief and relates what he saw, but the chief isn't taking it. When other cops blame Griswold, he goes a little bit crazy and is determined that he's going to take action against Snipes. Harry Griswold storms into the church, or tries to anyway. When the Reverend is done with his sermon, he sends the congregation out to score drugs across the street. Harry confronts Snipes, but it doesn't go very well. The crooks start to stalk Griswold as he tries to summon the Kabukiman spirit. But something goes awry. Instead of Kabukiman, he turns into a Western-style clown. The clown doesn't have anywhere near as effective weapons as Kabukiman. Deciding to run away, Harry commandeers a kid's tricycle, soon turned into a unicycle, to try and outrun 3 cars of bad guys. The chase leads to another park, where Griswold is mistaken for a clown hired to entertain a kid's party. The kids seem to be a little more entertained by the gunfire than the clown. The remaining car winds up running into the dry cleaner Griswold is supposed to be investigating, right after the captain leaves. Needless to say, things do not go well for Griswold. It's so bad he actually breaks the 4th wall.
I'm innocent. I didn't do it. Nice dissolve, huh?
The chief suspends Harry while falling for all kinds of clown jokes. Turning in his badge and gun, Harry is sent away, so he decides to go and visit Lotus and her monkey butler, Toyota. Griswold agrees to start training so he can use the Kabukiman powers, even to the point where he has eaten all of the worms. It seems that Harry isn't really taking the meditation seriously, so Lotus ties him upside down, forcing him to stay where he is while she beats him with a stick. His first task is to sort and count rice, under the threat of more hits from a bamboo stick. When he finally finishes the task, after 5 hours, Lotus mixes up the rice again, adds more, and gives him a time limit of 3 hours. Griswold walks out, still dressed in his red training garb. Lotus tells him that he is at risk, that the evil one will soon know who he is. She decides to reason with him American style, which means beating the crap out of him on the sidewalk. Stewart reveals his end plan to move everything out of the church, not trusting Griswold to obey his suspension. Lotus starts teaching Harry haiku, but he's finding it hard to focus, deciding to confess his sudden feelings for Lotus after their fight. The haiku works its magic as he transforms, for the first time by choice, into Kabukiman. Much like Toxie, Kabukiman focuses on evil and wickedness. Also like the previously reviewed film, we see a montage of crime fighting along with a rocking theme song. As he takes care of some of the crime of the Big Apple, the newspapers show that the public simply loves him. Now, I'm not very sure of the time frame here. The criminals are just now moving things, so did all of this really happen in just one morning? Man, the New York newspapers must be the most on top of thing papers ever. The bad guys bomb Harry's apartment, and he decides to leave Lotus safe and go after them. Instead, he gets run over by a truck, but thankfully his kabuki powers prevents him from dying. And though being stiff in the legs, he faces off against the punks that accosted La Rosa in order to find Snipes. Rembrandt corners Harry and Lotus on the roof of the church, but the kabuki powers are in full form, even allowing escape from an RPG. Come to find out, Kabukiman is capable of flying, which astonishes everyone. Harry drops Lotus off and goes back to get Snipes, flying him up into the sky and forcing a confession out of him by threatening an enema via the Empire State Building. With a taped confession about Stuart, he meets back up with Lotus. Over drinks, they share their first kiss and wind up consummating their relationship. With mid-coitus interruption by Kabukiman, urging Griswold to take the tape to the cops.
I'll be back.
Stuart goes to the docks to see how his evil plans are going. Everything needed to fulfill the prophecy is there. Tiger, jaguar, and monkey. Well, lemur at least. Meanwhile, Harry goes back to Lotus's place to find Rembrandt in her place. Per movie 101, it's time for Kabukiman to take a beating at the hands of the bad guy. Come to find out, his powers need the love of a woman to work. Amazingly, Rembrandt is strong enough to withstand a shot to the brain and not die right away.
Or an undertaker.
The monkey butler hands Harry one of Lotus's bras, and they use the scent to track down Lotus. Because that makes sense? They manage to find the dockside where the bad guys are. Harry goes in, guns blazing to save Lotus, while the monkey catches Stuart unaware, but trades his gun for the keys of the car. Thankfully, the cops are there and the chief saves the day. Or does he? As they are being arrested, the tiger's let loose, eats one of the henchwomen, and starts the prophecy. Now, how they led the tiger around without it eating anyone before is never addressed, just because movie. Stuart starts the transformation into the evil one, and Griswold is knocked unconscious. While Stuart is transforming, Lotus finally kisses Harry and causes him to turn into Kabukiman. That's right, the Kabukiman transformation is literally caused by the power of boner. Of course, the unexpected part of the prophecy is the monkey butler, Toyota, driving the car, which is a Jaguar. Thankfully, Lotus stops him before he can drive off, and Kabukiman wrestles with the evil one until he explodes, thus saving the day. As the sun rises the next day, which is the fastest sunrise ever, Harry stumbles out of the smoke, is taken off suspension, put on vacation, and Harry and Lotus walk off. Later, a crowd tries to figure out what is flying overhead. Of course, it's Kabukiman, who still needs to work on his flying skills. And that was Sgt Kabukiman NYPD. It is another fun and goofy film from Troma Entertainment. Much like their other movies, it's not a great cinematic piece, but it is fun. At just under an hour and 45 minutes, it can be quite a feat to get through it, though. There are some parts that feel like they added it just to pad out the runtime, but altogether it is a fairly decent story. Some effects look good, like the first full Kabukiman transformation. Other times there are technical problems, like seeing the crash pad for the Burning Man, and then they cut to him falling off the church. As with any movie, you take the good with the bad. So what do you think of the movie? Have you seen it before? If so, do you like it? If not, do you think it's something you might take a chance on or just leave in the unseen pile? Leave a comment down below, send us a tweet or a Facebook post, and let us know what your opinion of the movie is. As always, thank you guys very much for watching, and stay tuned for more from Ollamh Productions.
If you wanna see
Cheerio!
and also lazy, then you should meet me and my friends. Even though I got no money, for sure it's so funny.
Idiot. Oh, wait, I don't have to die.
That would be preferred.
We don't worry about
Let's see.
tomorrow.
When you found me, you were a dark smoke emergency exit system for gases.